Hi everybody, welcome again to another week of Bless Central. I'm James Beckford, and if you are here for your first time, do feel free to subscribe, click the bell button, and be notified of every video that I do. Stay tuned and be blessed. So this week's topic is called COVID Contentment, and the key scripture this week is Philippians 4, verses 11 to 12, and I read in your hearing, and it's in the Amplified Version. It's the Apostle Paul speaking. He says, "Not that I speak from any personal need, for I have learned to be content and self-sufficient through Christ, satisfied to the point where I am not disturbed or uneasy, regardless of my circumstances. I know how to get along and live humbly in difficult times, and I also know how to enjoy abundance and live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing life, whether well fed or going hungry, whether having abundant or being in need." The Apostle Paul is basically saying here that I've learned that whatever state I've been in, therewith to be content. And the reason why I'm content is because I have God. And when we speak about contentment, it means to be satisfied with your situation. And again, Paul explains this in that scripture that no matter what situation you're in, you can be content. That means when you've got money, you're content. When money is low, you're content. When things are going your way in life, you know how to be content. When things aren't going your way in life, you know how to be content. When you're single but you want to be married, you know how to be content. And then when you are actually married, you know how to be content. When you don't have any children but you want to have kids, you know how to be content. And then when you get those kids, you know how to be content. When everybody around you, it seems like everyone around you is succeeding, they're getting married, they've got money, and everyone's succeeding in life, and it feels like I'm not going anywhere, it feels like I'm not moving forward. I've learned to be content because God is the source of my contentment. And real contentment only comes with God. It doesn't come with things. And from my personal experience, I've learned during COVID that things can't keep you content. In my previous role, I had a role where you got a company car, and as a part of that role, every few months you could pick any car you want. You could pick a Tesla car, you could pick a Range Rover, you could pick the top range Mercedes, top range BMWs, and I did all those things. But it wasn't enough to keep me content. And now I'm in a different role, and now I understand that those things weren't enough to keep me content because now we're living in COVID. In my current role now, I work from home. So I'll get up in the morning, do my work, finish work, and then obviously because of COVID and lockdown, we can't really go out anyway. So having a luxury car that just sits on the drive, the car in and of itself can bring no contentment. It means also when it talks about money, money in and of itself means nothing. If I gave you £1 million right now and I put you on a desert island, what can you do with the money? You're rich, you got £1 million, but the money in and of itself cannot give you contentment and cannot make you feel content. The only thing that can make you feel content is God. Earlier this year, I was saying to myself, you know what? I'm going to reward myself. And I wanted these trainers from last year, and I finally bought these trainers. And I've bought them, but I've only actually worn them twice because we're in lockdown. Ain't nowhere to go. Can't really do anything. So the trainers in and of itself cannot bring me contentment. In the Bible, Jesus met a woman at the well, and he speaks to the woman, as we know, and he says that whoever drinks of this water, the physical water, the natural water as well, they'll drink of it, but they'll thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give, they will never thirst again. In other words, whoever drinks of this natural water, you'll drink it and you'll be satisfied for a period of time, but eventually that period of time will expire and you're going to be thirsty again. If you eat food and you feel full and your belly feels nice, but it's only a countdown until you begin to feel hungry again. But what Jesus was saying here, when it comes to spiritual things, when you take on these spiritual things, you will never thirst, you will never be hungry again, you will never lose contentment, you will be content and you will remain content in the things of God. So if you look in life, as I mentioned, food, you buy the food, you eat the food, You're content for a little bit, but then it runs out and then you're hungry again. You buy new trainers, you buy a new pair of shoes, and it's like a countdown. You buy the shoes, and after a while, it's the countdown gets back, and the hour runs out, and you need to buy a new pair of shoes. You do something for your hair, and you get a new haircut, you do a new hairstyle, and after a while, it runs out, and you need a new hairstyle. You buy a brand new car, you buy the brand new car, and you're excited, but after a while, it just expires, and guess what? You want to buy a new car. And that's how the pattern with the things of life. You get something and it's just a countdown or a matter of time before it actually runs out. But when it's spiritual things, we think about it like a clock. Every time it looks like it's going to run out when it comes to spiritual things, every time it thinks like things are going to run out, I'm going to lose my contentment. Instead of it ending, God just renews it, and I never lose being content with Him. And the 12 on the clock signifies the beginning and it signifies the end of the hour. Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega. So every time you've begun with God and you're content with Him, when it looks like you're about to run out and it's going to come to an end, He changes it from being the end and the Omega, and He changes it to be the beginning, and you continue and you continue and you continue and you continue to be satisfied with God, and you never thirst again, and you never lose your contentment with the things of God. And Jesus says that whoever drinks of this water will never thirst again. We used to sing a song back in the day where it says Jesus water will never run dry. You will never get to that point where you run out of the things of God. God will keep you content. In the book of Philippians chapter 3 verse 12, the Apostle Paul says this. He explains that he has not yet apprehended the thing that he's apprehended of. So in other words, when I want to get a new car, I get a new car and I've got the new car, but now I've got it. It's like, well, what next? It's for now, I've got it now. You get a new pair of shoes and now I've got it, but now it runs out and it doesn't no longer can be content. But we said with the things of God, God has apprehended me, but I've not yet apprehended the thing that I'm apprehended of. In other words, every time I get a revelation, every time I think I know Him, every time I get closer and I think I know Him and I think I'm about to run out, He's over there and He moves on, and I continue to chase Him and I continue to chase Him and I continue to chase Him and I continue to chase Him, and it never runs out of contentment. The living water that Jesus talks about, it never runs dry, and you never get thirsty, you never get bored, and you will remain content with the things of God, because you can't run out of the things of God, because He has no beginning and He has no end. When we look at the past 12 months in the whole world right now, the whole world has literally turned upside down because of COVID. People struggling with mental health, and people are finding it hard to find a level of contentment in life. Some people only know how to be content when they can go on holidays. Some people know only how to be content when they can have people around them and they're not isolated. Some people can only know how to be content when they have a level of finances or they've got a certain lifestyle. But we're talking today about COVID contentment, which means even though I'm in COVID, even though I don't have the things that I'm normally accustomed to, even though life may not be the same, even though things could be a lot better, I've learned, just like the Apostle Paul says, that whatever state I'm in, therewith to be content, because in the presence of the Lord there is the fullness of joy, and at His right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Silver and gold have I none, but I would rather have Jesus than silver and gold. Natural things can only satisfy you for a certain period of time, but then things run out. But the songwriter says that Jesus, you are the center of my joy. All that is good and perfect comes from you. You are the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Jesus, you are the center of my joy. That's why we sing the song, I've still got joy. I've still got joy after all the things I've been through, after all the things that have happened during COVID, after all the things that I've lost during COVID, after all the things I've experienced in the past 12 months, I've still got joy, because Jesus is the center of my joy. My contentment comes from Him, not from holidays, not from new clothes, not from being around certain people, but my contentment is based upon God and God alone. When God is your source, you will always feel content no matter the situation. In those situations, you can declare in every single situation that I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continuously be in my mouth. I will not be silent, but I will always worship you. As long as I am breathing, I will always worship you. Why? Because I've learned that whatever state I am in, therewith to be content, because God is the source of my contentment. Some people only know how to be content, only know how to give thanks, only know how to give praise in the good times. Some people can only feel content when Boris Johnson makes an announcement that we're going to open up the economy and we're going to reduce the lockdown. Some people can only be content when the government meant to make a certain announcement. Some people can only be content based upon their environment. But when God is the source of your contentment, it doesn't matter what Boris says, it doesn't matter what the government says, it doesn't matter what the environment says. You feed off every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Your contentment does not come from your environment, but your contentment comes from God. It's not based upon what you have or who you are. It's solely based upon who he is. When you look in the Bible, Lucifer was in heaven. Lucifer was the chief angel. He was the cherub that covereth. He was the angel that was beautiful and decorated. But he was in heaven, next to God, in the presence of God. But guess what? He still wasn't content. What God had given him and who he was and the position that he had was not enough to make him feel content. And some people, we only are able to have a level of contentment when we have a certain position or based upon who we are at a certain time in our life. But contentment does not come from your position or what you have. It can only come from God. Some people have the mentalities that I'm single now, I'll feel content in life when I'm married. Some people have the mentality that I don't have any children right now, but once I get children, once I have babies, I'll feel content in life. Some people now are in a situation where when I get a new job, when I get more money, when I get a brand new car, I'll feel content in life and I'll be content. But it's not so. We have to learn how to be content in every situation, in all circumstances, in the bad times and in the good times. In the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah prophesies and he says, for 70 years, we're going to be in slavery. We're going to be in bondage. And he says, look, tell your children to get married. Marry your daughters off. Marry your sons. In other words, you've got to live life. You can't wait until a certain point in your life before you be content and you can live your life. You've got to learn to be content now and live your life. When we look in the book of Exodus, the children of Israel were in slavery for 400 plus years. When we look at black people in slavery from the 1600s, they were in slavery for 400 plus years. And the situation was this: they had to learn to be content in those situations. Some people were born in slavery and some people died in slavery. So unfortunately, some people had to learn how to be content with the time that they were born in and the life that they had. So now we're in COVID and people now have to learn how to be content during COVID. They've got to learn how to live life during COVID. You've got to learn to celebrate your birthday during COVID on lockdown, maybe through Zoom. You've got to learn to celebrate your anniversaries and go on dates when you can't go out to restaurants. You've got to learn to have a wedding in COVID because of restrictions. You've got to learn how to have funerals during COVID. You've got to learn that whatever state you're in there with, to be content. And the reason being is that life doesn't stop. You can't think to yourself, I'll get married after lockdown, because we don't know when lockdown's going to stop. We're going to open up, but we could go back into lockdown. You can't say we'll have a funeral once lockdown's finished. You can't say I'll wait until this has happened, then I'll live life. We don't know when things will change. And in certain circumstances, as I said, some people were born in slavery and died in slavery, but you have to make the most of your situation. You've got to learn to make God the source of your joy, the center of your joy, and the source of your contentment, because unfortunately, just like Jeremiah had to prophesy, things aren't going to change. And unfortunately, in certain circumstances, things may never change in certain areas. So you've got to learn to have a level of contentment in your season, in your life. When God is your source, you will learn that no matter the situation, you will learn to find contentment because God is your source. And when God is your source, you are content. When you look in the Bible, all the characters in the Bible had to learn to be content. When we look at the 3 Hebrew boys in the Bible, They had to learn to be content. They were told that you have to bow down to a golden image and worship another god, or you're going to get thrown in the fire. And they were content being thrown into the fire. They says, look, we're not going to bow down to the image. Our God is able to deliver us from the fire. But even if he doesn't deliver me from this situation, just know that he is able. And sometimes in life, you may be under pressure to conform. You may be isolated. You may be at a point where you have to lose your job or even lose your life because you're a Christian. But you've got to learn that whatever state you are in, to be content. When we look at Hannah in the Bible, Hannah begged God and prayed to God to have a child, and God finally gave her a child, which was Samuel. She said, if you give me a child, I'll dedicate him back to you. So when he was weaned from milk, she brought him back to the temple and gave him away. She was content in giving the thing that she wanted most away and giving it to God. And sometimes in life, and I don't know who I'm talking to, you might have to come to a point where the things that mean most to you, you have to be content in letting them go for God. So you might have to let go of a certain relationship. You might have to let go of a certain job. You might have to let go of certain things. And you have to learn to be content in that situation, to sacrifice it and give it to God, just like Abraham did with Isaac, for God. When we look at Joseph in the Bible, he was sold into slavery and was in Potiphar's house. He's now in Potiphar's house, and he's about maybe 17 years old, something like that. He's a young boy, so let's say he's hit puberty, his hormones are raging, and in comes Potiphar's wife. And the Bible says she approaches him for sexual advances, sexual harassment in the workplace, and no one's watching, no one's there. But Joseph was content not to follow his bodily urges, not to follow his youthful lusts. He was content in remaining pure, and he says, how can I do this unto my God and unto my master? And he was content not to take things which didn't belong to him. And sometimes in life, we may be in a situation where we've had a bit of bad luck and it looks like things are given to us for free and no one's watching. But we have to learn to be content in staying in the right path and not taking a shortcut, not doing things that don't belong to us because people aren't watching us. We have to learn to be content in those situations and allowing God to move through our lives. Even in Joseph's story at the end, when he first meets his brothers, he says to his brothers, you meant this for evil. But because he was content, he says that God meant this for good. Because he could see things the way God saw things, he had a level of contentment that he did not have to react to his brothers and give them evil for evil. He didn't need to do that. And sometimes in life, people will do you wrong. People will talk about you. People will treat you in the wrong way. And you may want to react to them. You may want to do an eye for an eye. You may want to treat them the way they've treated you. But when God's the source of your life and the source of your contentment, you're content in not doing anything, and you're content in allowing God to work things out for you, and you're content knowing that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, so you don't need to react. When we look at Abraham, Abraham was promised a son when he was about 75 years old, and he had to wait until he was 100 years old for the thing that he wanted most. And sometimes in life, we have to be content in just waiting on God and not losing faith. The Bible said that Abraham believed on God, and he did not stagger at the promise, and it was counted unto him as righteousness. And sometimes in life, we have to be content that when God's given us a vision, when God's given us a word, we have to be content in waiting on him, not to try and do things ourselves, not to try to make things happen ourselves, but being content waiting for God, because he's the source of our contentment, and you'll be content in waiting for God to move. When we look at Jacob in the Bible, Jacob made an agreement with Laban that I'm going to work for your daughter Rachel for 7 years. And then once the 7 years finish, I'm going to take her for my wife. And as we know the story, he works for 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, he's tricked and he marries the wrong sister, which was Leah. And he finds out the next day that he's been tricked. But Jacob was content to work for another 7 years. He was content to work 14 years for the woman that he loved. Yes, things didn't work out the way he intended. And sometimes in life, when you're working really hard for certain things, things don't always go your way. But you have to learn to be content that life doesn't always go the way that you expect it. Life doesn't always happen the way you want it to happen. But you have to be content to continue to work and to continue to focus until you get the thing that you want. You're content to keep driving forward. You're content to keep having that passion. You're content to keep moving forward because of the vision and the love and the passion that you have for the things that you're striving for. Even when we look at God himself was content. The almighty creator, the one who created the heavens and the earth, was content to go from heaven and come to earth, to be made of a woman and made under the law. He wasn't born in a palace. He was content to be born in a manger. He wasn't born in the richest country or the richest part of the area. He was born in Nazareth, in the ghetto of Nazareth, to the point where people were saying, can any good thing come from Nazareth? He was content to make himself of no reputation and to humble himself. And sometimes in life, you'll be in a situation where you're in a job, you're in a situation where you're in a particular situation where you're bigger than the situation you're in and you're better than it. But sometimes in life, you have to be content to be humble and to remain humble for a period of time, because when you're content to be humble, in due course, God will exalt you to the place where you should be. So sometimes in life, you have to learn to be content in all these different areas of your life, no matter the situation you're going through. Just like the Apostle Paul, you have to learn that no matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, learn to be content in every situation. All these people that were spoken about in the Bible, they either had God as their source or they were God themselves, and it gave them a level of contentment. So the question you have to ask yourself right now, if you're living life right now and you're not content and you're not happy, why are you not content? Why are you not happy? Because I can't go on holiday. I don't like working from home. I want to be around people. I don't like being away from my family. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like this. And just like Jeremiah who prophesied, because when Jeremiah prophesied, there were other prophecies going forth. There were other people prophesying, say that we're going to become free, we're going to be free, we're going to become free. But Jeremiah had to get the unfortunate news and says, look, we're not going to be free for another 70 years. You're going to have to learn to be content. You're going to have to learn to enjoy life now. So I would encourage you right now, if you're not content, check your source. Because God is the only one that will give you a level of contentment. As Jesus says, if you drink of these natural things, you're going to get thirsty again. You won't be content. But he who drinks of my water, you will never thirst again. You can have contentment during COVID. You can have contentment in the bad times in your life. No matter what the situation is, you can have a level of contentment, because in the presence of the Lord, there is the fullness of joy, and at his right hand there are pleasures forevermore. God is the source of your contentment if you allow him to be. So allow God to be your source of contentment, and God bless you. And I hope this word has helped you, and I hope this word has blessed you and give you a fresh mentality to say, you know what, I'm not going to wait until I get married. I'm not going to wait until I have kids. I'm not going to wait until I get a new job. I'm not going to wait until whatever you're waiting for, but I'm going to have contentment now. I'm going to have joy now. I'm going to enjoy life now. Even during COVID, I'm going to have contentment during COVID. And if this word has helped you, do feel free to comment, to like, and to share also. And God bless you, and we'll see you next week.